there and welcome to Market Insights. I am Lovina Emah. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning. Yes, the weather is a bit cold, but we're happy to be here this morning. So today we are discussing the food importation in Nigeria and the measures and implications of this. Now, this topic affects all of us in this country. You know, as a Nigerian, I remember growing up with an abundance of fresh produce from our local farms. I mean, my grandma had a farm at the back of the house. The same thing, my mom continued with this after she passed also. So this is something that I'm deeply concerned about, why we are importing food in Nigeria, the implications of this. But today, it's a different story entirely now. Our markets are flooded with imported food items from grains like rice, wheat, soybean, tomatoes, food items like tomatoes also, and even proteins like meat. But have you ever stopped to think about the implications of this trend? Not just for our economy, but for our health, our culture, and also for our way of life. I mean, this is something we should all be concerned about. Now, we are importing foods that we can grow ourselves using valuable foreign exchange that could be spent on other critical needs. In addition to this, we are also exposing ourselves to health risk as some of these imported food items may not meet our safety standards. But what about our local farmers? Now, these farmers are struggling to compete with these cheap imports, and many of them have given up on farming altogether. Not to talk of the insecurity that's also affecting farmers. Some of them are too scared to go to their farmlands because of all these insecurity issues. Now, this not only affects the livelihoods of farmers, but also food security for us in this nation. So the federal government of Nigeria, to address the food inflation in the country, which is currently at 40%, the government announced several measures, including suspending tax on specific food imports, implementing a 2 trillion naira stimulus plan. Now, according to the government, these initiatives aim to stabilize food prices, support key economic sectors, and enhance food security in our country. Okay. Well, hopefully all this can be achieved, and while food imports can help ensure food security and availability for Nigerians, there's also the downside to this. So my guest this morning to discuss the food importation in Nigeria, the measures and implications, is Dr. Matthew Ahmed. He is joining us virtually this morning. He's an agronomist, a senior civil servant with Niger State government. He is also a member of the Agricultural Society of Nigeria, the Crop Science Society of Nigeria, and the Horticultural Science Society of Nigeria. So thank you for joining us on Market Insights this morning, Dr. Matthew Ahmed.
Yeah, good morning. I'm happy to be here this morning. Thank you.
I'm happy to have you on the program also.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are discussing the food importation in Nigeria, the measures and implications of this. Now, earlier on, I talked about how we're blessed with arable land in Nigeria, but currently, because food inflation in Nigeria is currently at 40%, which is really high. Now, what is the implication of this trend of importing food right now for our economy, for our health, and for our way of life as Nigerians?
Yeah, good morning, listeners. We are happy to be here today to discuss this matter. These are national issues that have been discussed over the last few weeks. In a couple of these few weeks, we have been discussing on the importation of food into Nigeria. There are a lot of implications to this, and there are measures that the government need to take, because as we all know, we know that food remains the most critical need of Nigerians, or every woman that need to survive on the surface of the earth. So food is very critical, and because food is very critical, the government has to step in to ensure that he did the needful so that the hunger that is ravaging the nation, the challenge of high price of food items in the country should be addressed. So to me today, looking at this is very critical because we all need to understand that food is very critical for every human survivor on this planet. And so I like to say briefly that the government has taken a bold step in the right direction to ensure that it suspend, the tariff, the duties in order for food item to be imported into the nation, so that every human being in Nigeria will have access, because several farmers we have seen that they have not been able to produce much because of the insecurity challenges that are in the nation. There are some local governments in some part of the north east and even part of the north central at the same time, in some few political regions, who cannot actually go to farm because of the challenge of insecurity. And so the government has taken the bull by the horn to ensure that they suspend, all the tariff, the duties, taxes, so that food items, can be imported into the country. And of course, these measures, to me today, I'm looking at it from three different perspectives. The short-time measures that the government need to take, the the medium-time measures that the government also need to take, and the long-time measures that the government also need to address. We can see that the suspension of these duties, tariff, and taxes is just for 150 days. It's not something that we continue. So the government is looking at this window to ensure that at least the challenge that we are in now, we address it, as the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, in collaboration with the State Ministry of Agriculture all over the country, are working out modalities to ensure that everybody has food on his table. And I'm happy to be here today because I'm sure the whole world has heard what the former governor, the governor of Niger State, Right Honorable Mohammed Umar Bago, is doing in order to reposition agriculture in Nigeria based on the comparative advantage that we have in Niger State. It's no longer a news, but we know that Niger State has the largest landmass in Nigeria. Niger State is sitting on the 86 million hectares of land, out of which 68 million hectares is arable. And so we are working hard to ensure that these measures, we look at them critically, so that there will be food for all, not only in Niger State, but we will feed the nation, and we will also export at the long run. This is our vision, and we know that we will get there not distance from now.
Okay. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Thank you for that, Dr. Matthew Ahmed. But now looking at this is, yes, like you mentioned, what's insecurity in Nigeria, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, where we get food items like yam, sweet potatoes, and other food items, bringing them down south. And due to this insecurity, we cannot, farmers are scared to go to their farms, so it's not something that it's very possible. Pending when the government can permanently solve the insecurity issues, I understand that this measure has been put in place whereby we can be importing some food items, and on specific food items, like you mentioned, there is a tax waiver for just the 150 days, like you also mentioned. But how does the government plan to use this tax suspension to on food imports to mitigate the current inflation?
You know, if you import the food items into the country, the government have decided that let there be this waiver so that we don't pay taxes, the tariffs are not being paid, even the duties are not being paid. Now, of course, what we are importing, we know that it has to do with foreign exchange. And if we are not very careful, that will even lead to the high cost of these commodities in the market. But because government has now waived the tariff, has waived the taxes, we expect that this price of food items, they should come down. If you travel to some few countries, Nigerian is the highest producer of cassava. But the price of cassava in Nigeria is so high when you compare it with countries like Brazil. And so when you import food items, because it's a function of productivity, wherein our farmers, their economics of production is very high. And because farming is a business, no one wants to go into a business and at the same time did not make any profits. So the turnaround based on the economics of production for our farmers, you will discover that where you spend like $10 in another country, you will end up spending like $6. Therefore, reducing the cost of production. And if the cost of production is reduced, I want to assure you that the prices of food will definitely come down. So with government waiver on tariff, taxes on this food that are going to be imported to the country, which will not be added into the cost of importation. Therefore, we know that the prices of food will definitely crash. That is my own personal opinion and analysis, looking at it from the foreign exchange, that because government is waiving this and the importers are not going to pay any duty for importing these commodities into the country, then that should not go into the cost of selling the produce.
Okay. Okay, yes, that's your own opinion on this matter. Yes, I understand what you're saying. But considering our local farmers now, how will they compete with these imported food items? Because we know that for example, due to logistic issues, it's not very easy for farmers to bring some food items from the farm to the market, perhaps due to bad roads and some other issues affecting them. But how will farmers now cope with this competing food imports in addition to them being able to produce locally? Wouldn't it be better if we focus solely on on improving our local food production in Nigeria?
Yeah, we will focus on our local production of food in Nigeria. But there is a problem at this particular time. We have a shortage. Now, what do we do? What mitigating factors do we need to put in place to address the shortage that we are facing at the moment? And that is why I said we have a short-term plan for this measure. And we also need to look at the medium-term plan and then look at the long-term plan in order for us to be full sufficient in Nigeria. So the short-term plan is to cushion the effect of the fact that we have a shortage. Now, we don't have enough storage. We don't have enough buffer stock. So the food item is not sufficient to meet the need of over 240 million Nigerians. And so, because we have not produced enough, either we have produced enough, and because we have not been able, to set the food system in its right perspective, a lot of wastage, a lot of post-harvest losses, which has reduced, the metric ton of what our farmers are producing. As a result of that, this brought the shortage. And so now the government took the bull by the horn to say, okay, let's import so that there will not be crisis, there will not be uprising, there will not be, protest, so to say, as they are planning also to start another protest because of hunger, because of the suffering. So government is saying, okay, let's import so that people can have food. Wherever you see chaos, wherever you see uprising, wherever you see people are fighting, if you dig in, you will discover that it has to do with issues of hunger. When people does not have food on their table, they seem to be very aggressive. And so government is saying, okay, let's import food so that this cannot be surplus. And then we cannot put our medium-term plans and the long-term plans in place so that there will now be food sufficiency in the country. Now, we talked about infrastructure. Even the farmers at the moment, several of them are also going to the market to go and buy. They don't have food. Most of our farmers, as I speak to you now, they are also going to the market looking for food to eat, even though they are the one farming it. They have sold all that they have to take care of their children's education, to meet their immediate family needs, to provide shelter for themselves, to pay for their medical bills. So at the moment, you will see some small older farmers who are also going to the market, lining up to go and buy food items that they will consume with their households. Now, again, I like to say, and give example of Niger State. In Niger State, the governor has released 50 metric tons of grains, and is going to subsidize this grain for the general public to come and buy. He has, been able to aggregate from the dry season grains. We are partnering with Niger Foods, Niger Food System Security and Logistic Company. They are the PPP arrangement with Niger State. And so they have been able to aggregate some grains. And at the moment, the governor is releasing these grains to the general public to buy at 50% subsidy. These are part of the things that the government needs to do. And I know that the government also have buffer stocks, and they are also planning to follow suit. Niger State has set the pace, and other states and the federal government of Nigeria also need to key in into this so that there will be available food for all. So the smallholder farmers, our farmers, to the best of my knowledge, they don't even have grains. They don't have this food available in the market. But we are hoping that in the next 60 days, we are hoping that in the next 40 days, depending on the varieties that the farmers have planted, there is going to be, harvest, bumper harvest. Farmers will start harvesting their crops, and then definitely that will also affect the high price of food that we are facing now all over the country.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Ahmed. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes. Okay, now, concerning the farmers, yes, you also talked about how Nigerians are very hungry. When you look at people who are fighting, the issue is they might be hungry. Yes. But really, should farmers really be going to the markets to be buying food items? Because I believe if everything is in order for them, they would probably be on their farms, farming their crops and ensuring that the harvest is well prepared. So, okay, that being said, now we heard about the Minister of Agriculture, Abubakar Kyari, and he has outlined from the federal government, they have outlined a 2 trillion naira stimulus plan to address the concerns about food supplies and how to improve on Nigeria's food security situation right now. And this is also going to serve as perhaps it's not a permanent thing, it's just perhaps I would say call it our medium-term plan right now. So now how would you, do you really think this, the main components of this 2 trillion naira stimulus plan is going to be sustainable enough to address our food inflation, which is at 40% right now?
Yeah, thank you very much, my sister. I like to say here, one of the challenges that our farmers are having, they depend so much on the rainfall for their crop production. So during the rainy season, the farmers, they are engaged food production. And during the dry season, they see it as off-season. They are not doing anything. Now, it is not so in other nations. We need to develop infrastructures like irrigation facility, construction of dams, so that farmers will continue to produce crop year in, year out. This is the major challenge that is bringing us to this point in this nation where we are facing this current challenge of food insecurity. Apart from the issue of the bandits, apart from the issue of kidnapping, insecurity in the north, in the middle belt, we need to look at how can our farmers continue to produce crop. For example, you can produce rice 3 times in a year. You can produce maize 3 times in a year. There is not any crop that you cannot farm at any point in time. But because of lack availability of water, farmers solely depend on rainfall. And even the rainfall pattern, for example, what we are seeing this year, is a disaster. Wherein farmers will plant and rain will not fall until after 15 days. So even if the seeds are viable, already there is a challenge. But if a farmer has a supplementary water, because people are also thinking that when you have dams, you have irrigation facilities, they are only for dry season production. No. Even during the wet season, during the rainfall season, there could be droughts. During the drought period, you use your irrigation facility, to supplement the moisture requirement for those crops. So, except we address our infrastructure, except we are able to provide dams, irrigation facility for our farmers. There's no way we can come out of this. And so if a farmer only plants once in a year, one cycle of production, how do you even expect him to come out of poverty? But if a farmer has access to water, to irrigation facility, he can continue to farm year in, year out. And of course, the productivity, which is the production per unit area, we totally increased. So these are issues that we need to address. Look at our cost of producing these crops, the cost of fertilizers, the cost of agro inputs. Unless we address all this, then the issue of food crisis will not stop in this nation. And I'm happy because development partners like African Development Bank, like IFAD, even the World Bank, they are investing hugely to ensure that these issues are being fixed so that farmers can have access to 2 or 3 cycles of production of a particular commodity so that these issues can be addressed. And I'm also happy to let you know, I need to use my state as an example. The Niger state government is also looking at how the moribund irrigation facilities can be rehabilitated so that farmers can continue to farm on those farmlands.
Okay, thank you very much for this, Dr. Matthew Ahmed. Yes, but I also mentioned the 2 trillion naira stimulus plan has been created by the federal government to address the concerns about food supplies and to improve on our food security in Nigeria. So I said, is this the stimulus plan, will it be sustainable to address our current food inflation, which is currently at 40% right now?
Yes. This stimulus plan can address these issues that we are facing in Nigeria now. It's not going to be only the federal government that will implement this. The state governments are also going to be involved. All the Ministry of Agriculture in the 36 states plus FCT are going to come together and design how we are going to ensure that farmers have access to agri inputs, how this fund is going to be used to develop infrastructures in order to address the shortage that we are having now. So what I will just say on a nutshell is to let you know that yes, this fund that is available will be used in order to address the challenge that we are facing now.
The Minister for Agriculture, Abubakar Kyari, said the federal government, in partnership with the private sector, will be importing 250,000 metric tons of wheat and 250,000 metric tons of maize. Now, how will the government ensure that the importation of wheat and maize benefits small-scale processors?
Yeah, well, are you hearing me? The importation of this maize and wheat will benefit the small-scale processor, not only the large-scale processors, because we have their data, we have where they are, and we know the quantity that they need. So all they need to do is to show expression of interest to say we need XY quantity to meet the need of our factory. Now, if you look at maize, for example, this will go a long way to address issues of poultry production also in Nigeria. We know that there is high demand for maize, for poultry feed. And at the moment, the cost of feed production in the industry is very high. And therefore, even the market, you hardly even see broilers at the moment because of this challenge. What we have in the country cannot meet the demand of the people because of the shortage. And so when maize is imported, it will crash, the price of poultry feed in the market. Therefore, bringing in several other poultry farmers into business, because as I speak to you, many of them are out of business. They are not producing or rearing any of the best again because of the high cost of feed. Because when they rear, the cost of feed to take this best to the table size is so high to the point that people are not willing to buy. And so our small scale processors, they will definitely have access to this. You cannot sit at your comfort zone and said the government should come and give you XY. But then you have to show yourself and say, yes, this is our capacity. This is our deficit. And so we need XY. And then the government is willing and we make all of that available. Even for wheat, we saw that the price of breads have gone high. Most of the bread that we used to buy, a loaf of bread that we used to buy for 500 naira last year, today as I speak to you, is going for about 1,500 naira. Almost about 200% increment. And, this also started because, most of those wheat are normally imported, and because of the Ukraine and Russia war, this caused a lot of issues to bread production. And of course, even in Nigeria, I know we grow wheat, but then we are not yet there for wheat production. And I remember that is why the government was also coming with a policy that there's a need for us to substitute 10% flour or cassava flour into bread. But those policies were not actually, sustained. And that is the challenge we have. So the government also needs to look at that. We are also going to look at that. The policy makers also need to look at that critically to say, look, since cassava also have the potential, because we also have cassava bread, we have some outfit who are into pure cassava bread. And of course, it's good for us. And so all I want to say to this is that the importation of maize, 250,000 metric ton, and also the importation for the wheat at that quantity will go a long way to meet the demand of our small scale processor and also the large scale processor in the country.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Matthew. Yes, Nigeria's agricultural sector is largely informal. So now how can a formalization of perhaps the integration of small-scale farmers and also large-scale farmers into the import-export value chain improve food security and economic well-being in this country?
Well, I like to say that the small-scale farmers and the large-scale farmers, they can key into the food importation in Nigeria. Now, I'd like to make some reference to my own particular state. The farmers have access to inputs. They have access to credit facility. Also, the large-scale farmers at the same time. But of course, because they are not on the same pedestal, they are not on the same level. Because when you say small-scale farmers, we are looking at farmers that cultivate between 1 hectare to 5 hectares. And when we talk about large-scale farmers, we are talking about farmers who have more than 5 hectares. We classify them as medium-scale farmers. But for the large-scale farmers, maybe farmers who have 20 hectares and above. Now, you will look at the cost of production. The cost of production for both small-scale farmer, medium-scale farmer, and large-scale farmers are not going to be the same. Now, the fund that is available to cushion this effect that the federal government has announced to us, farmers will have access to this fund in order to boost their production, in order to have access to their agricultural inputs. And again, we need to address a particular point because seed is very important. Farmers, they don't need to recycle their seeds. We need to get viable seeds, certified seeds, seeds that has genetic potentials to give us an optimal yield. These are part of the issues that our small-scale farmers are having. They are looking at, oh, how do I go and buy a Taylor maize? How do I go and buy an hybrid maize at 4,500 naira per kg that requires about 25 kg per hectare? And so, if you begin to look at the cost, then there's going to be issue. But since the government is going to provide funds and make funds available for our smallholder farmers on credit facility, like for example, I tell you this, in Niger State now, the farmers that we are going to be as a minimum wage of 50,000 naira per month, so that they don't sell the inputs that they are accessing from the private sector, or either from the bank or from an off-taker. They rather use that input directly on their farm, because what used to happen is that when farmers collect input and they don't have cash to meet their immediate needs, they say to sell off 1 or 2 bags, which is going to cause a deficit to the requirement of that particular commodity that the farmer plant in the field. So on this note, this is going to meet the need and the demand of our smallholder farmers and our large-scale farmers having access to credit facility that they will pay back.
Okay, well, I hope this will all be put into practice, because it's something that needs, this whole situation needs urgent action, more of action than talk. So now, Nigeria's issue, because you mentioned food waste, which is something that has been affecting our agricultural sector now. So how can we in this country address the issue of food waste and losses, particularly in the supply chain, to reduce the need for imports and also to improve food security?
Yeah, this is very critical. It's also part of the infrastructure that we need to put in place. Transportation of agricultural commodity from one point to another, causes wastage. As you transport from one point to another, you are losing some quantity. Farmers Several of them don't have access to storage facility in their community. And I'm happy to say that RAM is a World Bank project under the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. They are participating in virtually almost all the 36 states in Nigeria. They are now also going to be building aggregation centers within the farm estates, within the farm clusters, within the farm community, so that farmers can store their produce to avoid wastage. Actually, post-harvest losses even started right in the field. From harvest, the techniques that we use to harvest our crop, if you are not very careful, can lose up to 15% of your crop right in the field. So farmers' capacity also need to be built, especially our smallholder farmers that have no access to combined harvesters or mini harvesters that will harvest their crops and bag them right away in the farm. So the manual way of processing, of threshing our crops in the field, you may lose up to 15% of your crop in the field. And when you bring it out, if you have bad roads, vehicles can have accidents, and before you know what is happening, you are going to lose some quantity. Vehicles can even get burnt on the road in transporting these commodities from one point to another. But we have a concept of, at each farm gate, you can drop a container so that farmer doesn't travel more than 1 kilometer. And all they need to do is to tag their products and put it in the container. That also will help in terms of pest and infestation. Pest infestation will be reduced totally when you store, because you are storing the grains under tight conditions. Now, an example of this is Niger State government has signed an MOU with Dangote, and Dangote is willing to give Niger State government about 500,000 containers, so that we can put it in different farm gates and farmers can go and store, and we can also aggregate, so that when that container is full, a trailer will only come, drop another container, and pick up the other container and go straight to a processing hub where these crops, food items are going to be processed. So post-harvest losses, in order for us to address this, is an infrastructural need that has to be provided in our own community. And by the time we do that, we'll discover that over 35% that is being reported to be lost as part of our post-harvest losses in the country will definitely be addressed. And of course, we have some crops that are perishable, like tomato and all of that. So that approach is also different entirely. We need to create some hubs where these crops are going to be processed. How we increase the life share of these perishable crops so that our farmers does not experience losses, and the country will not experience food crisis as well.
Let's talk about the long-term strategies that the government will consider to maintain a stable food price and also food security in Nigeria. So if you can just summarize it for us quickly.
Yeah, very briefly, let me say that the long-term plan has to do with infrastructural development. The government will need to spend to develop rules, access rules. Farmers will have access to the production side. The government needs to develop irrigation facilities. When you go to some countries, even some few countries in Africa, country like Mauritania, wherein farmers experience just like a 2 to 3 weeks rainfall. Their government have developed irrigation facility, and farmers are growing their crop year in, year out. So this investment is very necessary. This long-term plan actually has to do with infrastructural development. Maybe let me just summarize it in that form because of our time. And particularly, I want to say irrigation facilities must be developed so that, our farmers can continue to farm
Very much,
2
Dr.
cycles,
Matthew
3
Ahmed.
cycles.
He's an agronomist and also a senior civil servant with Niger State government. Thank you so much for joining us on Market Insights
Thank
this
you.
morning. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Now let's
join
look
this.
at the money rates this morning, how the dollars, pound sterling and euro is faring at the CBN rate and also at the parallel market rate. So this morning, for the CBN rate, the dollar is currently selling at 1,510 naira to $1. For the pound sterling, and rather for the dollar at the parallel market rate is selling for 1,587 naira. That's the parallel market rate. Now for the pound sterling, the CBN rate is 2,001 naira to £1 sterling. At the parallel market is 2,051 naira to £1 sterling. And for the euro, at the CBN rate is 1,690 naira to €1. The parallel market rate is 1,725 naira to €1. So those are our money market figures this morning. Okay, so thank you so much for watching the program Market Insights. As you heard from my guest, Dr. Matthew Ahmed, how he highlighted the implications of this. And like he said, these are just short and medium-term solutions to the problem. The long-term solutions will be better. So Nigeria's food import dependencies lies in boosting our domestic production and also investing in agriculture. Like the guest said, irrigation needs to be successfully improved in this country. Many thanks for watching the program Market Insights. Do stay tuned to the news update on Souk News Television. I am Lovina.